Hello and welcome to Georgia Bulldogs Live on the Georgia Voice of College Football. I'm your host, Matt Green. I appreciate everyone for tuning in this week. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll be doing this all season, all off season as well. So please like and subscribe. Only if you want it. Only if you want it. I can tell you don't want it. No. Please, it helps us out on this channel for sure. But we're going to talk Georgia football today, as we do every week on this show. And we had the instant reaction on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. It was past 1:00, I think, by the time I got on here after the Tennessee game. Man, that was just a rowdy environment. I've had some chance. We've just given our initial thoughts at first, but I've had a chance to go rewatch the game once, maybe twice. I've probably watched that game, consumed as much content from that game as possible. As Georgia fans, I think we needed that one. It was just I think the best complete performance by this team so far in 2024. I like I said last week, I was in attendance for this one, and it was an awesome blackout environment in Sanford Stadium. It was loud, it was hostile, it was all the environments that Georgia's gone into this season. That was what it was, and it was this time it was on Georgia's side. So can't say enough about Mike Bobo's game plan. People love to hate on Mike Bobo, but man, that offense, it was after the first like 3 drives of the game, it was looking a little shaky, but it was still Bobo. It was like that first play of the game, dialed up the 40-yard bomb to Arian Smith, but we had another drop from this receiving core. So, Bobo was just on point the whole game. And I will say this, if Georgia gets that version of Carson Beck the rest of the way, this team is a legit championship contender as far as I'm concerned. Like, I know we've seen this offensive line just get absolutely dominated against Ole Miss a week ago. That was probably the part in the instant reaction that I didn't give enough credit for. Just watching back, like, Georgia played all the same 5 guys every snap of that ball game. Like, that's just amazing, especially for a Tennessee defensive front that prides themselves on what they just have like 8-10 guys that they just kind of throw at you. I think that was for Georgia to get for Monroe Freeling to step over to the left tackle spot and hold up the way he did. I felt like that was massive for Georgia to be able to play that way on the offensive line. And then you saw Julian Humphrey get that pass interference early in the game, and Daniel Harris came in. I think Daniel Harris may have solidified himself as corner number 2 on this team. Julian Humphrey, I don't think he came back in the game after that defensive pass interference. Maybe we see Ellis Robinson, the freshman that everyone wants to see, number 1 player in the country coming out of high school. But I don't know. This defense just played a really just well-rounded game. Didn't give up any big plays offensively. And you had Dylan Bell. That was another thing. He left the game, and it sounds like it's not too serious. So that's a good thing. We got Jackson Johnson in the chat. What's up, Bulldog Nation? I appreciate you reaching out. Jackson, always tuning in. But yeah, and then the Brett Thorson tackle. I think not enough has been made about. I don't think I made enough on the instant reaction about that. And they've had a bunch of fun on the social medias. I say like a super old person. But yeah, him rocking the Savage pads, teaching Georgia players how to tackle. The Aussie. I think it was first punt returned this year for Georgia, and Thorson makes the tackle. So that was big time. And also just the magnitude of the play of potentially taking that punt return. Now, I want to say that's when it was 7-0 or oh shoot, that could have been 10-0. But yeah, I mean, that was big time to get that punt and stop what the last man standing, really. So I think, I gave the stat on Saturday night about Josh Heupel allowing scoring 14.3 points per game against Georgia and averaging 40.5 against everyone else. So this Georgia defense has really just been Josh Heupel and this Tennessee offense's kryptonite. And just a couple more stats I want to throw at you before we just in our upon further review of the Georgia Tennessee game. Georgia had 69 plays for 453 yards. Tennessee had 73 plays for 319 yards. So Georgia averaging about 6.6 yards per play and Tennessee at 4.4. Like, this offense was just getting yards in chunks. Like, this is what we were expecting to see coming into the season. And then pass plays of 15 yards. Tennessee had 1 and Georgia had 11 in this game. It was night and day. Like, and the most frustrating part, I said this originally, and I stand by it after rewatching it. If I'm a Tennessee fan, you played well. Like, I would feel like we played a good game, and Georgia's still just better than you. Like, it's just 8 in a row now that Kirby Smart has won against the Tennessee Volunteers, and it's just like, I think there's this narrative that Tennessee's closing the gap, but I think there's also a chance that this is, I mean, I would say there's no doubt that this is the worst Georgia team of the last 4 years since Josh Heupel's been at Tennessee. So this is probably the worst Georgia team in the last 4 years. And Tennessee, you have your, number 1 ranked defense and your James Pierce, your first round pick, edge rusher. Like, I don't know that Tennessee's going to have a defense that's legit. There's obviously, there's a chance Nico breaks out and kind of lives up to that 5-star billing that everyone has for him. But I mean, to this point, like, if Nico wasn't a 5-star, I mean, no one's talking about them the way like Joe Milton was putting up better stats than Nico, and this guy was drafted 7th round. Like, if this guy wasn't a 5-star, I don't think you'd see any. I don't think people would feel as confident about this Tennessee offense, because at the end of the day, we've seen this offense play 7 SEC games now, and they're still averaging like 21 points a game, 22 points a game in conference play this year. Like, that's not very good. So there is a chance that Tennessee's better next year, but I tend to think this is kind of a lull with Georgia, and not to mention this tough strength of schedule that they're going to have the same teams next year, but a lot of these teams are going to be playing between the hedges. I think next year, there's a chance this was the closest Tennessee gets, and they haven't really closed that gap. But obviously, it was a great game into the 4th quarter, and Georgia comes out on top. But to move on here, let me start that over. To move on here, we're actually 3 weeks from National Signing Day. Tomorrow is 3 weeks till National Signing Day, which is just preposterous in my opinion. Like, it's terrible the way the college football calendar has just kind of ruined signing day, in my opinion. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. Now we're playing postseason games in December, and teams are supposed to be making their final pitches to recruits, to high schooler. Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, we should go back to the one signing day, and honestly, the one signing day should probably be in like March, because you still have all these guys getting poached by NFL teams, and NFL teams, they can't do anything until essentially like the first week of February. So it's such a train wreck. And for Georgia, one of the programs that is on a firm foundation, and their coach has been there for a long time, it does not bother them in the least. But for a team that's firing a coach, or you're in your first year head coach, like a team, I don't know, a guy like a Lane Kiffin who might go somewhere else. Someone else could poach Lane Kiffin, and you're playing postseason games. And if you're gonna leave for a job, you gotta, I don't know, you can't just stick around for the playoff. I would imagine you have to start building that recruiting class. So it just screws up the whole calendar. That's my side note there, a green take, if you will. But we are 3 weeks till signing day. This past weekend was a huge recruiting weekend for Georgia. Obviously, we've talked about Georgia's like kind of just weak home slate of games this year, and this was big time. College game day, national game of the week, blackout environment, and this team put on a show, and the crowd put on a show. Like, it was the stadium ops people put on a show, that's for sure. But Georgia currently sits with the number 3 recruiting class. A couple Tennessee commits, Travis Smith Jr., Christian Gass, were actually at this game visiting for Georgia. So, who knows what happens there. They're also just in-state guys. Maybe it's just a good chance to catch a Tennessee game. But a few things, because Georgia, one thing that says that's a little precarious about next year is obviously Georgia's going to be breaking in a first-year quarterback. So maybe that's Jaden Rashada, maybe that's Gunnar Stockton. But it's also like could be a guy out of the portal. And I think quarterback recruiting right now is really interesting. Georgia obviously has Ryan Montgomery, the 13th ranked quarterback in the country out of Ohio. Like he's in this recruiting class already. And then you have Juju Lewis, just decommitted, the quarterback out of Carrollton, Georgia. He decommitted from USC, which felt like a known thing for months now. Like it was just a matter of time he was going to decommit. But the day after the Georgia visit, he did decommit from USC. And, it sounded like Georgia and Colorado for him. He's the number 6 quarterback in the country. And then there's also the Cal commit, Jaron Kiwe Sagapulatelli, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Sagapulatelli. He's the number 7 ranked quarterback in the country, the Hawaiian. And he was actually supposed to visit Georgia apparently for the Tennessee game, pushed it back for the UMass game. And I just saw a tweet, I don't know who it was, a few minutes ago that I guess he's pushed that back again. So now he's going to be visiting Cal next week, and maybe he's going to visit for Georgia Tech, and that would definitely be a better environment than the UMass game. No disrespect to the Minutemen, but so that's also not great. If Georgia's making a push and he's making another visit to the school he's currently committed to. So that's the number 7 quarterback in the country. So Georgia's been definitely making a push for him. There's also the Mississippi State commit, Kamario Taylor. He's the number 9 quarterback in the country. So Georgia's definitely been making moves at the quarterback position. You can tell they want to sign another one of these top guys. And then you also have Jared Curtis from the 2026 class, who was committed to Georgia, and he was on campus versus Tennessee. And so he's obviously still in the mix. I think it's Georgia and Ohio State, I want to say, for Curtis, that are like kind of standing out. But I mean, that dude, number 1 quarterback in the country. So I'm sure it's a long way from over. And I think that's what it was more than anything. I think it was like he's not committed. He's still looking, and he didn't want to like feel like he was 2-time in Georgia, I guess. So he just said, I'm uncommitted, but Georgia's definitely still in the mix there. So this class right now, it should, like, at this point, it's like Kirby Smart, I feel like in some respects has like taken some of my enthusiasm away from recruiting, because I see a 5-star and I'm like, hell yeah, Kirby, good, get it done. And I see a 3-star commit to Georgia, and I'm like, oh, Kirby knows something. I bet this guy, he's going to be the real deal. We've seen the Lad McConkeys of the world, and I'm blanking on Eric Stokes. The list goes on and on. Those are just the 2 that popped into my head right off the bat. But obviously, this team just gets 5 stars on 5 stars each and every year. Currently, you got Elijah Griffin, Isaiah Gibson, Talon Taylor, and Zayden Walker, all 5 stars committed. Elias Williams, I know he's the number 1 tight end. I think some people have him as a 5-star as well. So you don't really see Georgia getting many of those 5-star wide receivers. So Talon Taylor, that definitely excites you as a Georgia fan. And Elias Williams, I mean, that dude is just a freak out of Camden County. So, I mean, a couple playmakers, a couple targets for this offense could definitely help. A couple difference makers, but then you just know Georgia's going to sign like 4 or 5 5-stars on the defensive side of the ball like every single year. And Justice Terry, who was formerly committed to Georgia, like he's still out there, top 10 player. So Georgia's potentially going to sign 3 top 10 defensive players, 3 top 10 players in the country, all on the defensive side from the state of Georgia. So if they can keep Elijah Griffin, Isaiah Gibson committed, of course, and then Justice Terry, if they can sign him. But they're currently sitting with a 3rd ranked class with 25 commits. Only Oregon has a higher average for like recruit rating, individual recruit rating. So, and they only have 16 commits. So I imagine, they get 9-10 more commits, and that average probably isn't quite as high. So, the being up near the top is always important, and Georgia's right there with Ohio State and Alabama in terms of like average ranking as well. So bringing in dudes, all of those programs, the usual suspects. And then on Wednesday, the former Rutgers commit, that 4-star edge rusher Chase Linton out of North Atlanta is expected to announce. So he was also on campus versus when Georgia played Tennessee. So a lot of good things happening in Georgia recruiting. I mean, that's pretty standard stuff, right? I mean, Georgia's always recruiting well. I mean, this team, I don't know the last time they didn't sign a top 3 recruiting class. So 3 weeks till signing day. A few more things will happen. I know Steve Wiltfong. We all trust Steve Wiltfong, probably the most informed guy in the game, and Rusty Mansell, of course, covering Georgia. Steve Wiltfong still seems to think that Georgia's going to end up with the number 1 class. So I think there's a few more guys out there that Georgia could land that could end up putting them over the top. So we'll see what happens when it comes to Georgia recruiting. But let's move on to the game that I think everyone wants to talk about, the UMass Minutemen. So UMass comes in, and I think everyone knows there's not much to say really about this game. UMass fired Don Brown this week, the former Michigan defensive coordinator, was 6-28 in 3 years at UMass. So he's out, and who's the guy? Shane Montgomery, I guess, who was a Miami of Ohio coach, I guess, in the early 2000s. Was Buffalo OC a few years ago, and Buffalo's offense was not that good in 2021, 2022 for what that's worth. But I don't know too much about Shane Montgomery, but he's going to be the interim guy for UMass. Georgia, this is the second time that Georgia's played UMass ever, at least since they've been D1. Maybe they don't have records before they were D1 or FBS. But they won 66-27 back in 2018. That was the team. Andy Isabella was on the team. I think he put out like 200 yards receiving on Georgia that year. He got drafted, so that dude was a baller, and I think that was the game. I remember Justin Fields having like a pretty good game. Not many of those you can remember as a Georgia fan. I remember he had just like a beautiful like 60-yard dime to Mecole Hardman, I want to say. Mecole Hardman, 57-yard touchdown. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Justin Fields, 5'8", 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. So, yeah, that's definitely Justin Fields' best game as a Georgia Bulldog. It's not a long list. I think the Tennessee game, actually, that year in 2018 was a game that he kind of came in and made a difference, kind of that playing that backup, change of pace quarterback type of role. So, but enough talk about Justin Fields. He went to Ohio State. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. We don't need him. Jake Fromm, great 3 years. I don't miss Justin Fields. In the Georgia not revisionist history, but in just the in the mental gymnastics I always can do to justify losing Justin Fields was that we never end up with Stetson Bennett if Justin Fields doesn't transfer, and Stetson won 2 titles at Georgia. So, hey, good riddance, Justin Fields. We appreciate that you committed, but Stetson Bennett took us to the promised land. I would have always liked to have seen Justin Fields as the starter, but who knows? So let me get into what I really want to see from Georgia in this UMass game. I'll be honest, I want to see Carson Beck throw the ball like 40 times in this game. And that might sound crazy because like this is a tune-up game at the end of the season. But usually when Georgia's in this position, there's an SEC championship waiting a couple weeks from now. So let's get healthy. We got Georgia Tech. Let's not, obviously they're better than they've been in years past, but let's not get hurt or anything versus Georgia Tech. Let's stay healthy for that SEC championship. Now, Georgia Tech's the season finale. Obviously, you have the playoff. 99% chance you have the playoff after Georgia Tech. But the fact that you don't have that SEC championship game right then, I think you kind of use this as just let the guys go out there and have fun. Like, let Carson Beck throw the thing around. Like, let this offense get some rhythm. Maybe we see some of these young guys. We see a Nitro Tuggle. We see a Covey White. Maybe like we saw a lot more playmakers. Like we're used to seeing Georgia spread around to 7-8 guys. We haven't seen that much this year. It's been like the same 3 or 4 receivers playing for the most part. Like, I'd like to see some of these young guys and, just get this offense just on rhythm. They looked good in the last, 3 quarters of that Tennessee game, but we want to see more of that, So I'm here for it. See, maybe Chauncey Bowens, maybe Dwight Phillips, some of those guys. I mean, defensively, maybe you see an Ellis Robinson play some, maybe you see a Chris Cole, Justin Williams. Maybe they play more like Smile Munden. It was huge. Smile Munden showed how big of an impact player he is on this defense. I think people kind of forgot about Smile Munden because Georgia recruits all these 5-star linebackers. It's no big deal to be losing one, but Smile Munden is the best inside linebacker on this team, and I think he reminded people of that. But at the same time, he's a senior. He's missed some time with injury. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw almost none of Smile Munden in this game. Let the young guys go in. This one makes some plays. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see Carson Beck, juice the stats. Everyone else does it, right? Like, go out there, throw it 40 times, throw for 500 yards, throw for 5 touchdowns. Like, just celebrate some touchdowns, just feel good, make these numbers look a little better. Let Georgia get a little more credit for how good the offense is, because obviously this offense has had its struggles, but they are the only offense. They're the only team in the SEC that has 6 30-point games. This is my stat that I feel like I've thrown out here for a few weeks. When it was 5 30-point games, they did let me down in Oxford, Mississippi, but this offense is, there's been a lot of offenses in this league that have struggled. And so Georgia's not the worst one. They've been pretty solid. So I think the struggles, while they've been there, a lot of it's been because of the turnovers. They've actually moved the ball well when they're not turning it over, which is obviously, is what it is. You can't be turning the ball over. It's a bad look. But I think the way Carson Beck played last week, gained that confidence back. Let him throw it around this week. Let him throw it around against Georgia Tech, and just try to get this offense, as in rhythm as they can be. Get a couple weeks off, get healthy. Maybe you get ETN back. Maybe you get another one of these running backs back by the time the college football playoff turns around. But yeah, Georgia in this game is a 42-point favorite. Like, you can do with that what you want. I know Georgia has not covered a lot of spreads this year. I probably am not picking them to win by 42, but maybe the defense gets some turnovers and they can do something. Obviously, this UMass team is not good. If they were, they wouldn't have fired their coach this week. So, there is that angle to this game. So, I think when I look at Georgia, you don't want to get any injuries in this game. You just want to stay healthy, have some fun, score some points. They put up a 60 spot the last time these two teams met. So I expect a big time number. This team's 2-8 on the season. Coming into the year, let me pull up their schedule real quick. So, they played Mississippi State a couple weeks ago, lost 45-10, played Missouri, lost 45-3. So UMass is always scheduling these SEC teams, and you saw both of those teams win easily, and Mississippi State's probably the worst team in the SEC this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia covers a 42-point spread, but I'm not going to be out there giving anyone advice to jump on a Georgia minus 42 versus UMass. So that's just me. You do what you want. Let's see. Next, let's go around the SEC. So we got a few more games. I hate how the SEC does this. I'll be honest. How every year the SEC, it's the toughest conference to play week in and week out. And then at the end of the season, everyone loves to say, "Oh, your conference is so tough. Well, we are playing UMass and Wofford in week 13. What is that?" Like, I just hate how people always do that. And I wish they would just stop scheduling these November cupcakes for that reason. And like I said, Georgia's got UMass, Tennessee's got UTEP, South Carolina has Wofford, Arkansas is playing Louisiana Tech. And then we got some SEC games. So last week went 3-1 overall, 2-2 against the spread. The Florida Gators, only one I missed. I should have known. LSU they were just worn down. That team is just like broken, it feels like. LSU, 4 losses, Brian Kelly. And DJ Lagway, after getting taken off on the cart in Jacksonville, he wanted to play a week later, and he does play 2 weeks later. So Florida got the win. Napier, they really needed that to try to get to bowl eligibility, and they should be able to now. I mean, Ole Miss, let's start with Florida. So Ole Miss, that's our noon game. Ole Miss comes in this week. And I want to say this game feels like a little like it could be a little dangerous. Like I feel like Florida is finally kind of, feeling themselves a little bit. They clearly never gave up on Napier. I think it's good that they did have already make the decision that he is back next year, just for like a continuity purpose. And the main reason was probably DJ Lagway. Like they got their quarterback in freshman DJ Lagway. And so, he obviously likes Napier. And so that was probably the biggest leverage that Napier had going for him. But the fact that they just beat LSU, who's not a good team, but it is a team that beat Ole Miss this year, after watching Ole Miss just dominate Georgia's line of scrimmage, I feel like I've completely changed my mind on how good this Ole Miss team is. But they've had a bunch of performances this year that have not been impressive. So I tend to think this is dangerous, and I think I will take Florida to cover that 10.5 point spread. But I don't think they can really beat Ole Miss. So I'm going to take Ole Miss to win that one. Probably something like 30-24 or something like that. So I'll take Ole Miss in that one. And then let's see who else do we have in the SEC. Kentucky plays at Texas. Texas is a 20.5 point favorite. I'm just gonna say it now. I'm taking Kentucky against the spread. Against the spread, not overall. I should have started with that. Against the spread, I'm taking Kentucky because I still don't know how good Texas is. This is game 11 we're going into, and Kentucky's not good either. But it's game 11 we're going into, and I still don't know how good Texas is. Like, I would like to say that they're great and Georgia dominated a great team. I don't know that they did. This team, I don't know what deal they made with the devil to get this schedule, or Greg Sankey. Now that I'm calling Greg Sankey the devil, I don't know what deal they made to get this schedule in year one, while Oklahoma got the schedule they got. But I mean, we're going into week 11, and their best win, they're a 1-loss team, and their best win is Vanderbilt, at Vanderbilt, or Michigan. What, a 5-6 or 5-5 Michigan team, or a 5-5 Oklahoma? Is that their record now? I don't know, but Texas, I just still don't know how good they are. Arkansas, like, that's kind of what I was thinking going into last week, because Arkansas did beat Tennessee in Fayetteville, but they also got beat handedly by Ole Miss and LSU. So that was one of my things against Tennessee. It was like, well, not everyone has had trouble when they went into Fayetteville, just you guys. And so Texas had some trouble with the Razorbacks. So 20-10, like, that thing was a game in the fourth quarter. So I don't know. I just still don't know how good Texas is. So 20.5 points, like, Kentucky just has a way of kind of keeping games close. Obviously, you saw them beat Ole Miss, saw them keep it close with Georgia, way too close with Georgia. They could have won that game. But 20.5, I don't think they score 30. So I think it's just probably something like 27-10, or maybe even closer, 27-13, something like that. And Kentucky kind of hangs around, and Texas wins by multiple scores, but I don't see them covering that spread. And then we only have a couple more, right? Let's see. At 4:15, so Kentucky, Texas, that's our 3:30. That's not exactly Gary Danielson and Vern Lundquist 3:30, but it is at 3:30. 4:15 on SEC Network, we got Missouri at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's worst team in the SEC. I think Missouri's only a 7.5 point favorite on the road. I'm taking Missouri all day. I think Missouri, I don't believe in Missouri at all. I was kind of on them to be a fraud the whole year. not frauds, but you know what I mean, in terms of being a preseason top 10 team. I never thought they were a true playoff contender, even though Eli Drinkowitz didn't give up on that until a couple days ago. I think Missouri, that was one of their better games of the season, to be honest. The loss at Williams-Brice Stadium, almost had that game. But yeah, Mississippi State, they're just Mississippi State is the get right game for everyone. Even when Georgia's offense was doing terrible, Carson Beck still threw a couple picks, but Georgia put up a 40 spot, 450 450 passing yards. I want to say like 600 total yards. So I'm going to take Missouri to win this one. I'm going to say 34-20, and they cover that spread. Then you got the Alabama Crimson Tide, 7:30, going to Oklahoma, which seemed like an interesting game in the preseason. Now it's 8-2 Alabama versus 5-5 Oklahoma. Alabama's a 13.5 point favorite in this one. And this Oklahoma defense, has been pretty good this year. So I can see them, keeping this close and, maybe not letting Milroe just go crazy. But at the same time, they've lost 4 straight games to SEC opponents. This Oklahoma team, they at least got to have some fun and beat Maine sprinkled in there. But, they get up 30 to Missouri, 35 to South Carolina, 26 at Ole Miss, 34 to Texas. I think Alabama in SEC play has been consistently as good as any of those offenses, if not better. It's just been kind of the Tennessee game, really, that we didn't see. And Milroe was hurt for that game. So, that could be why. But Jalen Milroe, just like when this guy is doing his thing, this offense seems unstoppable. So I'm gonna have to take Alabama. I'll take them to cover that 13.5 and beat Oklahoma, let's say by 2 touchdowns on the road in prime time, though. So maybe Oklahoma's got one up their sleeve. Let's see, who do they have left? They're gonna need one more to get to bowl eligibility. So they got Alabama this week, and then LSU at LSU final week. So it may be tough, man. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, potentially 6 of the last 7 Oklahoma could lose to finish this season. So that is not what they wanted in year 3 of Brent Venables. But we'll see. They haven't done it yet. And then the wild card game. This is the one that Georgia fans need to be watching for. So especially after today, I think most Georgia fans going into, and we'll get to the college football playoff rankings here in a minute, but I think, and that was unveiled like an hour ago. I think going into this game, or going into this week, I should say, I think most Georgia fans agreed, I don't really want to make the SEC championship game. Lane Kiffin talked about it. Like, there's no need for the SEC championship game. I don't feel like the college football playoff chairman that we're speaking to, Reese Davis and them, I don't feel like he gave a real clear answer on whether or not teams who lose conference championships are going to be punished or not. So Auburn is Georgia's key to the SEC championship. It could be this week. Well, I should say this week starts to open up a two-step scenario, 2-step verification. And then next week is plain and simple. If the Auburn Tigers win one of these games, Georgia will be in the SEC championship. Well, scratch that. If Auburn Tigers win one of these last 2 games, Georgia has the chance of being in the SEC championship. If Auburn is to beat Texas A&M and Texas A&M beats Texas, Georgia's in the SEC championship. And then if Auburn upsets Alabama next week, Georgia's in the SEC championship. So, I don't know if Georgia wants to be in the SEC championship, but sitting at number 10 in the playoff rankings and looking at a trip to Penn State on the road, maybe we want that SEC championship and to potentially get that top 4 seed and first round bye. So I may have changed my mind on there. And going to Jordan-Hare Stadium at night, there's a reason A&M is only a 2.5-point favorite in that one. Oh man, I know weird stuff happens at Auburn, and especially at night. I think I'm gonna take Texas A&M though. Whether it's Marcel Reed, whether it's oh man, I'm blanking on their other quarterback. Oh man, I gotta look this up now. Who's their other quarterback that I'm blanking on? That's been Connor Wegman. Whether it's Wegman, whether it's Marcel Reed, I just Auburn has had just so little firepower this year. So it like Jordan-Hare Stadium would be doing a lot of heavy lifting there. And if there's a stadium that can do some heavy lifting and can get some voodoo going, it is Jordan-Hare Stadium. But and obviously it's at night. So Vanderbilt, that was also at Jordan-Hare. They just lost 17-7. Like that's a noon kick. Yeah, whatever. So then they had a bunch of road games prior to that. So this is the biggest home game they've had, probably all season. What do they have before? Let's see, before all these road games, they had Oklahoma at home. Yeah, that was a big one at the time, and they lost that one close. Arkansas won by a couple scores, and they lost to Cal. So they've obviously lost several times in Jordan-Hare Stadium this year, but I don't think any of those games were at night. I don't think any of those home games were at night. So, maybe Jordan-Hare's got one. That's kind of what I joked about a week ago. Like I think I got excited and picked Arkansas to beat LSU a couple weeks back. And it was like, no, these teams just get one. You just get one. You don't get to do this multiple times. Auburn hasn't gotten one yet. So maybe Auburn gets their one this week versus A&M, but I can't take it. The 2.5 has me a little worried, but it's also like A&M just needs to win by a field goal. So give me A&M to go on the road and beat Auburn. And the last one, Vanderbilt, LSU. Shoot, 6-4 versus 6-4. Death Valley at night, as always. It seems like every home game LSU gets is at night. LSU's a 7.5-point favorite. Vanderbilt, their magic is dead. It's been dead for a few weeks now. So I'm not really scared of Vanderbilt. I'm more scared of LSU just like quitting on the season and them just just giving up completely on Brian Kelly and him kind of losing this team. Like they've lost 3 straight, and the A&M game and 3 straight by multiple scores too. Like they've been beaten handedly 3 straight, and by a Florida team that was not very good before last week. And obviously you saw the stats. I don't know if anyone out there saw the stats discrepancy in LSU Florida, but it was kind of crazy. Let me see if I can pull it up here. So Florida won 27-16. LSU had almost 42 minutes to 18 minutes in time of possession. I don't have the plays right here in front. They ran like 90 plays to Florida's like 40 something or 50 something. It was just it was insane, but only 392 yards to 339 for Florida. So Florida is much more efficient. And LSU with the 1 turnover in the game. But yeah, going in the swamp is never easy. And that's like I said, everyone gets one. Florida got their one, right? So maybe I should be picking the Auburn Tigers. Maybe this is their chance to get their one versus A&M. But yeah, we shall see. And that'll open up I guess that'll probably clear up a little bit of madness. If A&M is 1-2 loss SEC team be out of that mix, but then it just, like I said, it opens up that potential trip with Texas to College Station, and we'll see what happens there. Like that could make things real wild if Texas. And I feel like ultimately with how good Texas is, I feel like they should lose that game. Like and all those SEC teams be tied up there with each other. And it's crazy. We get this crazy SEC season. And then if that were to happen, it ends up being Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC championship, like it is most years in recent history. So, we'll see what happens with that. You know what? I got to do it. It's just vibes. It's just vibes. I got to go. I got to go with the Auburn Tigers. So I got to do it. Now, the more and more I think about it, that's going to lean into everything. It's Auburn is going to beat A&M, and then A&M's going to beat Texas, and it's just going to be chaos because A&M will be that much more hungry when Texas comes in to town. So my picks on the week: Ole Miss to get the win, but Florida against the spread. Texas to get the win, but Kentucky against the spread. Missouri to win and cover. Alabama to win and cover. Auburn to win outright, upset pick of the week. And then LSU to win and cover. So that's what I got for the SEC picks. And then college football playoff rankings just came out. So let's check out these college football playoff rankings. Let me see. I got a fancy graphic here I can put on the screen. Let's get these rankings. Ooh, there we go. There we go. We got the graphics working now. So there's your college football playoff rankings going to week 13. So you got Oregon at number 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5. The Big Ten bias going on here. I've been told the SEC bias is what the media has, and we got 4 of the top 5 in the Big Ten right now. And then we got Notre Dame at 6, Alabama at 7, Miami at 8, Ole Miss 9, Georgia 10, Tennessee 11, and Boise State at 12. And then just some interesting ones, some other contenders. I think the contenders go all the way to 16. So you got SMU at 13, BYU 14, A&M 15, and then Colorado at 16. I think those are the 16 teams that can make the playoff right now. And I guess, something happens with Boise State, Army, or Tulane or something could get in there. So, maybe something could happen there. But my biggest issue, I think, with these rankings right now, the ones I see, because I was prepared for Georgia to not really jump that much because of that roadblock of Alabama and Ole Miss. So the first thing that sticks out to me, because I kind of been calling it the glob in the SEC, this Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, all these 2-loss teams. If I'm making my rankings, A&M is right there behind Tennessee. I'm not really sure why Boise State, SMU, and BYU are there. A&M, their 2 losses being at South Carolina and to a Notre Dame team that the committee ranks number 6. Like, I don't know. I think A&M has if we're going off quality losses, I don't know, what is A&M's best win? It's probably LSU, who I guess looks worse and worse each week. So Tennessee probably has a stronger resume. So I'd put Tennessee ahead of A&M. But the issue I'm having is I'm not sure where we're distinguishing between Notre Dame, Miami, and these 4 2-loss SEC teams. Either I think these 4 2-loss SEC teams should all be ahead of Notre Dame or Miami, or Notre Dame and Miami should be ahead of all 4 of them. And so the fact that you have Notre Dame and then Alabama and then Miami, I'm not really sure what Alabama's resume is that Ole Miss and Georgia's isn't. I know that Alabama beat Georgia, but they haven't played Ole Miss. So they both have that second conference loss, and Alabama did lose to Vanderbilt. So it's not like Alabama has just some unbelievable resume. They had the loss to Tennessee, a good team, and then the loss to Vanderbilt, a bad team. Ole Miss has the loss to LSU, who's, looking worse and worse each week, but also a game that LSU never led until they took the lead in overtime in Death Valley, one of the toughest places to play. And then the other one is the bad loss to Kentucky. We're going strictly resume-wise. Georgia's lost to Alabama and Ole Miss and has the wins over Tennessee and Texas. I think Georgia's resume is clearly the best of the 2-loss teams, but you just can't put them ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss because of the head-to-head. So I agreed with that, but I think that glob, starting with Alabama, should be starting at 6, and Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Tennessee should be sitting at 6, 7, 8, 9, in my opinion. And then Texas and Penn State are probably my biggest issue because let's start with Indiana. Indiana being behind one loss, Penn State, is the most just idiotic thing I've ever seen, to be honest. Like, also Indiana being behind Texas makes no sense. Ohio State has a clear big time win on their resume. Although we're 11, like I just said, we're 10 weeks in, or 10 games in, I should say, for both of these teams. And I still don't know how good Texas or Penn State are. Like, Penn State's had more, dominant results. Like, they've taken care of business against most teams. That USC win looked big at the time, even though USC's kind of nosedived. But, I still think that was a good win. That's their best win, though. Like, their best win is versus, I think, a 5-5 USC team. I don't have their record right in front of me. But Texas is sitting here, like I said, with their best win versus a Vanderbilt team or Oklahoma or Michigan, that teams that are just bad. Like, Ohio State at least has the win over Penn State. That's something that Texas and Penn State don't have. So I would have no problem. Like, I know everyone's talking about Indiana's got the 106th strength of schedule and all this. They're 10-0, okay? Like, I don't really care. They should be number 3. Like, I'm putting them at number 3 because they're 10-0. Ohio State, Indiana, that'll work itself out next week. But I'm just going to have such a huge issue with Ohio State's going to beat Indiana, and Indiana's going to go from number 4 to like number 14, or number 4 to like number 12 or something. And Penn State, for losing to Ohio State, is still just sitting here at number 4. Like, Indiana and Penn State essentially have the same resume as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think Indiana's has been worse. Penn State's got the one win over Illinois, sure, top 25, quote unquote. Yeah, Penn State does have that. And then, like I said, the USC, who isn't a good team. But Indiana's undefeated in the same conference. So as far as I'm concerned, Indiana should be at 3. And then all of these 2-loss SEC teams have better resumes than all of the 1-loss teams in front of them outside of, I would say, Ohio State. So I have no problem putting Ohio State at 2, and then Indiana at 3. But in terms of, like, I would have Texas and Penn State probably behind all these 2-loss SEC teams, because I haven't seen it from Texas and I haven't seen it from Penn State. They don't have a big win on their schedule this year. So as far as I'm concerned, those two teams are just, they're overrated at this point. But the Texas one will work itself out, because if they beat Texas A&M, okay, it's the eye test. They're definitely getting the brand bias, but they had one loss in an SEC schedule. They're going to be in the SEC championship, and whatever, they'll deserve a top 4 seed if they win that game. A&M, obviously, they're going to be the chaos team. If they win out and get in the SEC championship, win the SEC championship, they're going to get a top 4 seed. So they're one of those few teams that are actually in control of their own destiny at this point. But seeing Boise State, that's probably my biggest issue. Seeing Boise State at 12, like, get out of here. A&M should be ahead of Boise State. 1-loss SMU, 1-loss BYU should be ahead of Boise State. I'd probably have Colorado ahead of Boise State. But I think that'll work itself out. I think the Big 12 champion. So let's see. I also have let me pull up this, the bracket here. So this is what the bracket's looking like right now. This is why I have such an issue with Boise State. I think if BYU takes care of business, and I think BYU plays Arizona State this week, so that's a dangerous one. It could be Arizona State and Colorado, I think, in the Big 12 championship. But I think if Colorado and BYU run the table from this point on, I think that conference championship win will be enough to bump them ahead of Boise State. Oh, man, but this honestly makes me sick. Seeing Boise State as the 4 seed in the college football playoff bracket. Like, I know how the automatic qualifiers work. You got the top 5 conference champions, and the top 4 of those get the automatic bids. But man, I hope in year 1, I don't know if we have a 2-year agreement on this thing. I hope we can change this after 1 year, because this is so obviously a failure in year 1 to have Miami sitting here as a 3 seed and Boise State sitting here as a 4 seed. Like, we can't have this. So, Georgia's coming in at number 10 in the first rankings. They would be going at in terms of rematches, because I'm big on rematches, I really hope they do what they can to avoid rematches in the first and like second round. Like I just hate for like, Texas and Georgia to get matched up in the second round of this thing, for Penn State and Ohio State to get matched up in the second round. Like that would just be really dumb to me. We're already seeing too many rematches in terms of like, we're probably going to get Ohio State, Oregon, conference championship game. So, we got to minimize these rematches. In terms of that, this bracket looks amazing. Like, other than all the SEC teams going on the road here, like that's kind of crazy to see. But you got the 12 seed BYU going at Ohio State, and the winner of that will play Boise State. And then you got number 9 Alabama going at number 8 Notre Dame. The winner of that game will play Oregon in the second round. And then you have number 11 Georgia going at number 6 Penn State, and that's to play Miami. And then in that last one, you got number 10 Ole Miss going at number 7 Indiana. And that is to play, let me get this off the screen here. That is to play Texas. So that's obviously going to change, because Indiana is not going to be in that spot. Either they're going to beat Ohio State and be even higher, or they're probably going to lose and probably get, fairly, unfairly. Once they have a loss, then I feel like you can start to judge their resume versus everyone else. That's kind of where I am. Once Indiana's loses a game, like all those 2-loss SEC teams immediately jump ahead of them. I think all those 2-loss SEC teams should be ahead of Miami and Notre Dame right now, personally. So I think that's probably the biggest issue I have with the whole bracket. Also, if you're Georgia, you're sitting here at number 10. There's no data points left. I mean, you have UMass this week and you got Georgia Tech this week. There's nothing, or next week. There's nothing Georgia can do to look better in the eyes of the committee. So I'm a little surprised to see Georgia at number 10. And I mean, they obviously can go up in the rankings if someone loses, but they're not going to go up much further. So it's hard to see Georgia getting a home playoff game without, like something like Texas losing and Indiana losing, or someone else getting upset here or there. So, we'll see what happens. But I think at this point, Georgia fans might be changing their tune and hoping they can get to the SEC championship and somehow get a top 4 seed in that first round bye. All right. With that said, that is all I have for you this week. I appreciate everyone for tuning in and participate in the live chat here. Like we talked about earlier, UMass, it's not going to be the biggest game. Hopefully, Georgia puts up some points, gets out of there healthy, looks good defensively, doesn't give up too much, get some sacks, get some turnovers, maybe a defensive touchdown. I think we're sitting here and going into game 11. I'm racking my brain. I don't think Georgia's got a defensive touchdown this year. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but you got to get those defensive touchdowns. So let's see if Georgia can do that. Maybe that's my bold take of the week. Maybe it can be my boy Jalen Walker, maybe scoop and score, something like that. But that's all I have for this week. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. I will be coming at you late on Saturday night once again to talk Georgia UMass and any other things about college football that happen on Saturday. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly Under the Radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.